in a box tutorial, and today I will explain you how this scene works. Additionally, you have a PDF file in Russian and in English languages. There are a lot of nice screenshots and all the correct names of all the things that we will be using. So there is really not much difference between the video tutorial and that PDF file. But you can choose whatever you want, which way is more convenient for you to learn. That way you can take. So, okay. This graph is totally ready for work. You can start from the very beginning. You just need to put the PCG folder that you received from the downloads into a content file. First, you create the Unreal Engine project, any of them, just empty, or you can use the third part so that you could run as a mannequin around the generated biomes. But it's totally up to you. And in content folder here you put this PCG folder. Okay, first of all, you don't open anything, you don't open this folder, you go to edit to plugins and you make sure that all PCG plugins, these 4, are activated. If you activate them, the engine will restart. You wait until that, and then you come here again, and then the PCG graph will work. But if you want to follow the example, in the example we don't provide any mesh, it's only PCG graph, only the programming part. So if you want to get some mesh, you can use, for example, Rural Australia pack. It's available on the FAB for free, but you can use any of your prepared mesh. That really doesn't matter, that's only for convenience and only to follow the tutorial, not an advertisement. Okay, so first you don't open any data asset before you download the Rural Australia if you want to use it. You go to Window, FAB, Plugin, and there you find the pack. That's why it's important. If you open data asset before you download the mesh, all the links will be broken and you won't be able to repair them and you will have to do all the things by hand. Okay, so here is the pack. You just press add to project and wait until it downloads. After Rural Australia pack is downloaded, you can open the data asset and all the mesh will be attached here. Okay, 2 things about Rural Australia pack. Maybe if you open this scene, you may find that there is no water, there is just static mesh plane. You need to attach water textures here by hand. It's not important at all, but here it is. You just put it here. Okay, second thing is the ground. You will soon notice that those pieces of ground aren't really pretty. They have these borders, they don't look nice. So we go to Rural Australia pack, to static mesh, rocks, and we use these 2, Ridge Rock 1 and Ridge Rock 2. Here it is. The only problem here is that it's pretty plain, you see, so there is not enough height to cover the landscape perfectly. The only reason why I show you this is because you will meet this problem a lot if you want to use such pieces of ground. So to fix this quickly, you go to Modeling tab. Your mesh in the scene is activated and you go to Deform, Dynamic Sculpting. So everything will happen in Unreal Engine. You maybe a little bit smaller. Okay. You just put the edges, still too big. You just put the edges and push them down. Okay, this may look a little bit not so good as it could. It's better to find perfect mesh that has the height, that has some sides to work with, okay, or maybe use flat stones instead of that. But if you don't have anything else, just those ground meshes, this will work perfectly. Okay, so now I have space. So, okay, you see, we fixed this mesh, but after you do this, we sculpted not the example in the scene, we sculpted all of them. They static mesh, so make sure to have a duplicate before that if you don't want to have a deformed ground. Okay, there are two types of this ground here, and half of them is now fixed. This ground got a lot of smoother by now. That's, I think we can stop here. Here are the fixed ground, you see, and this one is unfixed. That totally doesn't matter for today's purposes. We go back to our PCG, and now we'll talk about the decal actor. It's used in path type A. It's not written that it's type A, but it's type A because there exists already type B, and maybe C will come somewhere. We need this decal actor because this is the thing that is projected here along the paths. We need just any decal, that doesn't matter which, but if we are looking for a really quick decal, we can look for megascans. So we are going to Fab again, Quixel. Here it is. Quixel is a publisher. That was megascans a year ago, and we go to decals tab. Totally doesn't matter which, you can choose anything. I just think that for the paths, something like fallen leaves will work perfectly. In this example, I used canna leaves. You can see them here. You press the button Add to Project. You got those leaves. They're here in Fab. Megascans, decals. Okay, so decals is technically a material instance with special settings. You can make them like this. So we take decal actor. You choose, I think, like this, and you put your material instance here. And now you have this blueprint ready to work. Now we have set up everything what we could. We are totally ready to dive into PCG graph, so let's go. To open the level, you go to PCG folder, PCG landscape biomes, folder levels, and here is the only level, showcase PCG. We open it, and here we get this empty state. This water, it's plain, just simple plain mesh. If you don't have water material attached to that, you go to rural Australia, water, and just attach material instance here. Okay, so to turn on the PCG, the problem is it's a very heavy one. There are a lot of meshes now, so I turned off all the switches for you, so everything went smooth from the first place. This is the level, this is the blueprint, landscape biomes, and here we have the switches, separate switches for trees, bushes, rocks, grass and ground. You can turn any of them without downloading the whole PCG. For example, we turn on ground for now. Okay, it's a lot of meshes already, and it's beginning to think heavy, you see. Then we turn on all other switches, trees, bushes, rocks and grass. Don't worry, they are all dependent on each other, so if we turn on, for example, trees, we will get more bushes and rocks. Hey, are you gonna work? Okay, it's stuck already, you see. So if you don't want much experiment, you can work with just a little tiny bit of it. I will show later how to make everything from scratch. Start creating a new PCG from scratch. We create a new level, I'll call it demo, for example. And here we have nothing. To quickly set up a new environment, we go to Environment Lighter Mixer and just push all the buttons to have the basic setup. Okay, now we need landscape. Everything is pretty simple. We just make an ordinary landscape. And here it is. We can start working with it. We need to attach the landscape material to it. First, landscape materials lie in landscape materials folder. Take the material instance and put here. It's a really simple landscape material. You can upgrade it as much as you want. The main thing here is this node, because we make the layers L0, L1, L2, L3. Those names are used in PCG graph because PCG graph takes the information about environment layers and generates mesh according to it. But all these things are up to you. You can do whatever you want until you have this node. Everything will work smoothly. Here I use just base colors to demonstrate it. It's up to you. You can put texture here or make something really difficult and complicated. Here we have our landscape. We start painting on it. Okay, first we need to create layer info and just accept everything he says. It doesn't matter now, we're just showing. So, okay. And now we paint a little bit, make some green. PCG will take information into account only if the layer weight is more than 0.5. So make sure they are really solid. So something like this. So let's start placing the PCG graphs. We start with the PCG bounds. It's in the main folder, the PCG landscape bounds. This is a simple spline with 4 dots. You can add more points if you want. Okay. The only thing that is difficult, you can't scale it. You have to move the points with your hands. Sorry. But why do they do this? Of course, we could avoid this additional restriction. But the good point is that PCG is a really uncontrollable thing, and if somehow happens that you will have a really large area that should be automatically covered with a lot of generated grass, trees and other mesh, the scene will break, and to avoid that I added this additional spline. And only inside the spline anything can be generated. So there are three conditions for conditions for mesh to be generated. First is landscape layers. Only where the layers are painted something will generate. Second is this spline. It can be convenient if you have, for example, a really large area and want to use the spline only in some of them and don't generate mesh all over the world. And third thing is the main blueprint. Here it is, landscape biomes. It's a box, you see. And when this box crosses the spline, it automatically generates everything. It doesn't have bounds inside it. So for convenience, we make it something really big. Okay, not this. Here it is. Those are special parameters only for the visual side of the box. Now you see it's giant and we go inside it. And here is the first generated mesh. So let's go inside it and look how it works. You see, it now has 3 different zones, and when we paint the landscape, for example, let's take green, it's now a tree zone. It takes some time, and we added some more biome, automatically generated. So nice. What is more, we can sculpt the landscape inside here. So if we make some mountains, you see, all this mesh automatically climbs this landscape. Maybe really dramatic rocks are feeling a little bit bad with ground settings right now, but it's up to you. In the ground you can put something like solid rocks, not empty plates, and that will work much smoother. So it's really up to you. So now you see those zones between different colors are a little bit empty. That's because the PCG graph only works when the layer weight is more than 0.5. So if a lot of layers are blended, sorry, it's loading. So if a lot of different layers are blended in one place, it may appear that there is no one layer that has more than 0.5 weight and nothing will be generated. Don't worry, it works pretty smooth usually, but if you want, you can always go inside and toggle the settings. Sorry, I just can't look at those edges and I'm going to fix that now. Don't worry, it will be quickly. Perfection is not a nice thing sometimes. Which rock 2? Here it is. And now let the magic happen. Yes, it works perfectly. Okay, there are still some edges, but you can fix them by modeling everything more accurately than I'm doing right now. You see, those PCG are much more smoother now. You can experiment really with ground, it's totally up to you. You don't need to cover the whole landscape with it. For example, we can, let's go. So I will show you data acid now. There are 2 types of them. In first, there are meshes, and in second, we have the information about what we do with all this mesh. So we find ground, point sample spacing, it's 200 now, and we will make, for example, 500. They will become much more loose, you see, only in one biome, not everywhere. And if we have some nice texture on landscape, we can make them blend together. Okay, but have to correct the z-axis for ground, maybe dive it a little bit inside the graph. It's maybe not simple, but it's not difficult as well. You will have to do this if you really need that. I prefer totally covered for today, just for demonstration purposes. So here is the ground. I will activate all other boxes. I can hold that, okay. And I will show you our special splines that we can use. They're all here, so you already know what blueprint PCG bounds is. It's the spline. Here it is, you see? It's the spline that makes the borders where we generate mesh, and opposite to it is blueprint PCG remover. When you put it, it's small as well. You can't. It's better not to scale them. It's better to make everything by hand. It's not that difficult. So when we put it, everything inside this spline will disappear, except for ground, because it was supposed that maybe you have some PCG forest and want to have some pretty place, for example, to put there some mesh by hand, maybe some house in a forest, or put some special rocks, design it perfectly, and you just remove all the trees, all the unnecessary rocks. You leave the ground, of course. You need smooth place to work with, and here it is. It doesn't matter where you move all other things. This place inside remover will stay untouched. Both of these blueprints have the same structure inside. As you can see in viewport, there is a spline. Here it is. And it has a tag. The tag is the most important thing in all these splines. So you find Actor section, Advanced, Tags, and here you can see PCG remove bounds. And we will go later in the PCG graph, we will find that PCG graph finds everything with this tag. If I put, for example, in this graph another spline, a new spline, and tag it with that tag, that will work pretty the same way. But you can put as much removers and as much bounds as you want. That's why they are blueprints, for your convenience. Another two nice blueprints that you can see, they have pretty the same principle of work. They just have different settings inside the graph. Those are spline path, it's a path, okay. So spline is just two dots, it's an open spline. You can put them, you see, and there is some thickness for your convenience, so you could see a path inside it. You can take this point, you can hold Alt on your keyboard and pull one of these arrows, and you will get another dot. So let's make a nice path across this forest. And as you can see, while I'm making this path, all the trees and all the stones are removed around it. I'll show it a little bit later in the debug section how it works, but for now you just should know that paths remove all rocks, all bushes and trees and grass around them. They just leave ground. And this one spline, it's the one that we made blueprint decal actor for. It's just a projection of your texture on the landscape. That's not mesh, there are no new leaves on it, that's just a picture. So if you look closely, it may be not really perfect, it may have some bugs, but if you need it, you can use it as you wish. The main reason why I put it into the graph, so that you could know how to put decals into PCG graph. For example, decals can be part of the main forest, it's totally up to you. Just here in the example, I'm using it for the path, as it looks pretty nice. Okay, second spline is path B. It's much more simple and traditional, nothing difficult, totally the same in use. So, hey, come here, don't hide from me please. So we take it and it will generate some mesh. It uses word array heat query. It's really difficult to pronounce this node. I will show you it as well. So you see this mesh is projected from upside down on every mesh that it meets. So when it's above landscape, it will be projected onto landscape, and when it's above ground, it will be projected on the ground. Another advantage of this particular blueprint is that it has 90 degree rotation. So maybe it's not that visible with this particular fence, but if they were square, you would see that they are ideally located along the spline, and although there are only two meshes, they are rotated, so you can meet all four sides of this fence along the spline. So it's something that you don't meet really often in tutorials. Enjoy, it's my little present. It's difficult and not easy to understand thing. Okay, so now I have two splines that cross this forest, and you make as many of them as you wish. You can add more paths, you can add more fence, you can go inside the data asset fence, because this blueprint, you see, this blueprint, it takes this data asset, and you can regulate this in blueprint PCG landscape biomes. It's the main biome. So there are two settings for this fence. First is data asset. For example, you can put the same forest main that is used in the main forest, and you will see that along this spline some mesh from the forest is placed. So rocks, ground, and so on. If you put fence again, fence will be generated. It's really convenient. And inside it you can see there are only two mesh, fence 1 and fence 2 from the rural Australia. So here it is. Now let's talk about the main data assets. You have one example of the main, it's forest main, and it's used in all three positions. So L1 is for layer 1, L2 is for layer 2, and L3 is for layer 3. And you can use different data assets for each of them. So you can put different mesh, you can use different sizes or different settings for them. But now I just wanted to demonstrate the difference between the biomes, for example, forests, thick forests, and rocks without any trees, can be made with only using the PDR PCG biome settings that are only numbers. So these numbers are the only difference between biomes here now, but you can be as creative as you want. So let's look at this data asset. Here you can add, by pushing the plus, as many mesh as you want. You can save as many files as you want. For example, if you have a birch forest and a pine forest and you want to compare them, how they look with the same settings, you just put your main data asset with birch, duplicate it, make another. Okay, let's duplicate. Make another file. For example, here we will delete all trees, one of them, and make, for example, this small grass tree as tree, so nothing would be broken. Here we will find next tree. There are two of them. Okay, let's delete it as well. Save. So now we have two variants. We take this, we put it on the place, And now you can see that we have no trees at all. Instead of them, there are more small bushes. Okay, and if we want to return everything back, we just put our previous data asset and everything will be back okay. Exactly the same trees if you didn't touch any other numbers, because PCG is a stable thing. If you put the same input, you will get the same output. That's how it works. So let's look further. Here you put the mesh and here you put the weight. For example, if you have weight, I need to show that as well. Let me think. So, okay, we have the demonstration now. We have two types of trees and these giant rocks. Here they are. They're both trees technically. That doesn't matter what you actually put in the mesh section. And now they have the same weight, 1 and 1. You see, they are equal. But if we change the weight, for example, we put here 5, that will mean that for every 5 trees there will be just 1 rock generated. You see? Something like that. And if we make the opposite thing, the opposite thing will happen. That will work with any amount. There can be 3 or 10 or 100 different meshes. All the weights will be calculated accordingly to each other. Something like that. So, okay, let's go further. Scale, as you could see, it's X, Y, and Z scale. For example, these rocks are too high in Z scale now, because I wanted them to be noticeable. And rotation, it changed the primary rotation, but that really doesn't mean you usually don't want to use this section. Clutter, I can't remember really what it is used for, just don't touch it. I hope it will work someday. And there are some classes: tree, bush, grass. Grass and plant are actually the same now. There is no difference among them. That was for some future experiments. Rock and ground. So if you have ground mesh, you just tick the ground section and it will generate it as ground. Let's go to PCG. Okay, let's fix everything. So you see, if we have enable ground unticked, all ground meshes will disappear and only them. So that's just how you categorize all this stuff. And the last thing is spot. It's a difficult thing. We will discuss this a little bit later. Just don't touch that if you don't know how it works, and everything will work smoothly. Okay, so now let's discuss the PCG biome settings. That's a lot of numbers, but don't worry, it's pretty simple. Here we have classes. For example, tree class comes the first. Enable is not the same decal as here in the main PCG graph. This tick, it enables and disables whole class in all biomes, and this tick will enable and disable mesh only in this particular biome. So for example, when I enable tree, you see in this one biome trees will appear. So let's come further. Let's choose something forest. Yes, this is the first one. 3-point sample spacing, it's the number that shows. So technically every PCG graph generates grid from the scratch. And this is the distance between grid points. For example, if we make them smaller, we will get more trees. Woohoo! If we make this number larger, of course, there will be less points and less trees on them. Tree distance spread, it's not really important for now. you won't even notice it, but okay, if you had an island of these trees, you may want that the trees on the side will be much smaller. So if we make it something really big, a little bit too big, let's experiment. Okay, so now you see that near the border trees are much smaller, and in the center they have normal height. That's what this number means. How much will go from border to inside of the spline, and in this area trees will be much smaller. When we put only 500, okay, 500 centimeters, I don't know what this number is, it's too small, and for example this tree is already in the center, it isn't affected by this part of script. Maybe you will have some situation when you will want to use this setting. So 3-point scale low and 3-point scale high is for the most little, oh my god, the smallest and the biggest tree. For example, if we make something like this, we'll have some really large trees and some really small trees. It happens randomly. So let's return everything back. Okay, now I have normal trees again. They have difference only 1.3 number, but it's pretty enough to make this nice shape of the forest grown. So tree density filter low, that means that when we generated the point grid and all the points are here already, we want to delete part of them randomly. This number can come from 0 to 1, and it's the lowest point of the amount of trees that will rest. For example, now only 20% of all trees will disappear. If we make it 0.9, 90% of trees will disappear. Here are only 10% of them. Not so charming. I want a forest for today. And this is use spots. It's that difficult thing that I was talking about. So maybe we will discuss it now. So again, we have now a rock and tree example. Let's make them equal. Okay, and to use this spot feature, we should make sure that in one class we have meshes with different spot numbers, 0 and 1. So now we have only 2 meshes, and the tree will be, for example, 1, and rock will be, tree will be 0 and rock will be 1. It doesn't matter, it only divides everything in 2 parts. Okay, now we make 3 use spots, and from the first glance you don't notice the changes, but that means that now spatial noise is applied here, and you can regulate the size of this noise by using tree spot tile size scale. For example, if you make something really small, you see the size of the spots became really large, so there's a big area of stones and big area of trees. If you change it to something bigger, the spots will become smaller, and now you can't see the difference that clearly. Let's make something really big. Okay, so now they are totally mixed because the size of the spots is much smaller than the rocks and the trees, so they're just mixed randomly. So you can experiment with this size, you can try to get the best result that you want. So you see now the spots are visible again, and this thing works for trees, for bushes and for grass. For example, you can mix two different types of trees. You can mix spines and beards and make sure that they are not mixed like a salad, but have some nice islands. Or for example, if you want to have some spots of flowers among green grass and not just randomly mix, it's just another useful way to help you organize this stuff. Make sure that you tick this box only if you have two different spot numbers. If you want to see why I insist on this, let's make both of them 0. And now our rocks. You make something nice so nobody would be scared. It will take just the first mesh from the whole arrow, mesh index 0, and here it is, and it will spawn it as much as it wants without any branches, and it may break your editor, because he says, okay, I have mesh with spot number 0, but I don't have any mesh with spot number 1, so I will just take the first mesh and generate it as much as I want, because it could be nice to fix it, but that's how it works for now. So never tickle the box if you don't check the data asset. You untick and it should return to the position. Hey, regenerate. So now you see this is a useful button. Force regeneration. Oh, it's broken. You see, never play with this feature. Sorry. So let's continue. As you can see, the settings for bush are pretty the same as settings for the tree. You can see the same point sample spacing for the grid, same distance spreads, the scale and density filter, and the same spot settings. Exactly the same for rock. And exactly the same for ground. There are even less settings, as you don't need all of them for ground. You just need spacing and scale. That's all for now. Something interesting happens only when we talk about grass. Let's come a little bit closer to our forest here. And let's activate our grass so we could see it. The grass point sample spacing is exactly the same. It's about the spacing between points in the first grid. But as grass is really thick and we need a lot of grass, we have secondary grid. And secondary grid has some size. Space between points in secondary grid is always 30 for now. You can change it inside the graph. But you will need only this thing. It's the size of secondary grid. The bigger it is, the more grass you will get, the thicker it will become. And you can play with both of these settings, with point sample spacing and initial point spread. Just make sure that none of your settings become too crazy, because a lot of grass is a potential way to make a computer fly away in space. So point scale low and high is pretty the same. Density filter low is pretty the same. Tree radius and tree scale is the thing that you will like. You may notice that around tree grass is usually bigger. And here it is. We'll make 10 size of the grass. Wow! Around trees, grass is really big now, and computer is freezing already. Maybe we will lower settings a little bit. And this is about tree scale. It doesn't scale trees, it scales grass around trees. And tree radius, it's the radius where this will happen around trees. The bigger it is, the bigger the circle will become. Oh, don't play with grass, it's really difficult for a computer. We'll return it to 2. It's okay, so that's all. Nothing difficult, only a bunch of settings for each class. So now you may not notice it from the first class, but grass around trees is twice bigger as grass in the field. I like it. And if you make some biome where a lot of grass, which is really green, it will be much more visible and look much nicer. So let's talk a little bit about the creation of this data asset. This may sound a little bit difficult, but all of them are using blueprints. So if we open, we can see parent class PDA meshes. Let's look for it. PDA meshes like here. Here it is. It's blueprint graph, and the only thing that it has is variable dynamic mesh as meshes. As meshes, it's the structure that is used, and dynamic mesh is the name also of this variable. So where the as mesh lies, it's here, it's structure, and it makes the way that we see the information. So you see static mesh, come here. So here is what you see when you add new mesh in data asset, and here is what you see when you make it in structure. You can add new things of them, you can edit it, add variables, and after that you just compile structure. If you make any changes in structure, make sure to compile this blueprint as well here. And after that, all the data assets that has this blueprint as parent class will change as well. So these two use the same parent class. They are both PDA meshes, as you can see, and they will have new structure after you make any changes. Okay, so if you want to make a new example of this data asset, there are two ways. You can duplicate or you can make a new one from the blueprint, but I think it's a little bit difficult. Duplicating is much quicker. So about this, they have another blueprint. It's called PDA biome. We can look at here. Here it is. It's exactly the same. The only difference is that variable is called biome and it has structure biome. Structure biome is here, so you can see it has all the parameters, and here's how they look. And here you can make the basic preset numbers. Don't mess up anything with it, because, for example, if you make grass point sample spacing 0, you will never be able to open any scene with this PCG graph. Just make sure to not overheat your computer. Something like that. Okay, let's go to the main PCG. As you already know, this is blueprint. It doesn't make much from the first glance if you look at it. It has only the construction. In earlier versions there was a big table of all the variables. It put blueprint variables and throw it into PCG graph, but now PCG graph behaves normally and see all these variables without any problem. Here are the variables. Mesh array, where we put our data asset, enable trees, all those things that you see here. So here they are. They are visible variables that you can touch and you can play with them. That's how it works. That's all about blueprint. Now you know that all variables that you touch, they come through here and they go directly to PCG graph. So this is the heart of the whole pack. This is how all the thing works. And let's see. Get spline data. This is about our spline remover and spline bounds. Bounds comes here, it creates variable spline data, And from spline data, as you will see, becomes every generation. First of all, it takes information about where it can generate anything. And only after that, only in the end, it will filter the biome, our landscape data. Second is remover spline data. It has all what is needed to remove something from somewhere. The delete of anything happens here. So you can see this is subgraph here, and in difference, remover information is put inside. This is the place where we take information about our data asset. We call self. That means that PCG graph looks inside that blueprint that we have just watched, and it looks for mesh array variable. So let me show it to you again. Mesh array L1, here it is. It will look for this variable. If we go to attributes of this node, we will now see that it has the information only about where this data asset is lying. We haven't got any information about what's inside it. For this is the second node, as you can see. So now we know everything about our static mesh and all the things that we have decals and creatively made. Okay, so you see dynamic mesh here. Dynamic mesh is the name of variable that they has just seen here in blueprint class. So this is dynamic mesh. This is what it's looking for. And now when they have all the information about all the meshes, we need to sort them. So where in area 1, it's layer 1, biome 1. We have 3 of them. That's pretty old-fashioned for now because Unreal Engine, they are working actively on cycles that let you generate all these just in one node. But as we have data for every biome and it's separate data, so we use this a little bit old-fashioned way, but it works and it will be easier for you to create something new. Don't worry of this graph, it's really simple. The only problem is that there are a lot of nodes, but each node is totally understandable. Don't worry, you won't get lost in them. Take all our data that we have, and so you see subgraph is a little bit separate PCG graph that is put inside this graph. Maybe not that understandable, but all these graphs. So you see PCG landscape biome is the main graph, and all of them are subgraphs that we just put inside. For example, if we open this graph, we take some of them and put inside, we can generate a new node. Here it is. But if you open it directly, it will have something like this, another small graph. That's all for optimization. You don't have to repeat all these nodes here in the main graph 3 times. You just put this subgraph and all the information comes here, and that's why we have 3 cycles here. Don't worry, you don't need this if you want just to paint some of your layers, some of your biomes on the landscape. Just believe me that it works. You already have all the information you need to generate biomes. Just go ahead. Information now has more technical things for those who want to make something new with this graph. If you don't want to make new biomes, if you want just to understand, for example, how to create data asset that is convenient to work with PCG graph, or maybe you want to know how to make decals work with subgraph, you can watch all these things, and that's what I'm explaining now. So here we put all the information about all this mesh from all our biomes, you see, and now we just filter it back into grass, plant, bush, rock, and ground. It uses not attribute filter. This just looks at the target attribute. For example, here is the filter for tree. It looks, does the parameter tree, it's a boolean, is it true? If it's true, it thinks that this mesh is a tree and it puts in tree mesh. If tree parameter is false, it just doesn't do anything, it throws the data away. And we have this filter for every cluster. Okay, so in the output we have mesh for trees, for grass, for plants, for bush, for rock, for ground. Where it will come in the end of every graph of every class. Here it is. It's the place where they associate all the points that we have generated with mesh. And what we are doing here, we are matching data. This is not match and set attributes. We take weight, we take the scale, and we take the rotation. And only after that, then, as you can see, points have all information needed about the mesh. Here it is. What static mesh it should spawn, what scale should it be, and what rotation should it have. It all mixes with the information from points, so everything goes smoothly. And only after we have all this information, we need to spawn new mesh. We spawn it. So if we enable static mesh spawner, you can see there are no mesh, but there are dots. We can look at them. Spline data from spline bounds, as we already know, and we get information pretty the same way as we get it from data asset mesh. We get all our numbers from the biomes. Here it is. Here is a small thing that works with enable and disable class ticks. Here comes in boolean if ground is enabled. It comes from biome data. Let me show you. From here. So this tick, it works here. Here is the information. And this node, it is located here. So it mixes with AND math operation. If any of them is disabled, no mesh will be generated. So you see, we use branch. If output gets false parameter, it will go to output A and just disappear. Nothing will generate, nothing will happen. But for now we have positive meaning here, and we go further. So spline sample, this is where first nodes will generate. So this light blue dot means that we are debugging. There are some shortcuts: debug only selected Ctrl-Alt-T or disable debug Alt-D. Use it, it's very useful, believe me, if it will work. So here is the debug. Here is the first point grid. First. It generates everywhere inside bounds, in all biomes, with the space. You see this parameter? It comes from here, 3-point sample spacing. Here it is. Oh, sorry, ground point sample spacing. Furthermore comes the projection. Projection doesn't do anything with the points, but it makes another important thing. It takes information about landscape. So if you look at the attributes, we now have L0, L1, L2 and L3 parameters. That means that every dot that we have just generated, each of these dots, it knows on which biome it is located. And as you can see, it have different meanings. For example, this one has 0.1 of L3, and that means that it's not L3. It will be L1 because this number is higher than 0.5. Okay, and now we filter everything. So we're debugging. it filters everything that lies on L1 zone. So if the parameter of L1 is higher than 0.5, then this point will pass this filter. Now you can see that those cubes, they are only on L1 zone. This is our first biome. Okay, let's go further. Match and set attributes. It's the place where every dot that survived the filtration gets all the information that we have here. We didn't attach it before because there are a lot of dots and we filtrated a lot of them, and now each dot knows everything, all the trees, pot scales, all bush scales, all grass scales, doesn't matter which point it will be, what will be generated on it, it knows everything. It was the most convenient way to pass the information into subgraph and not mess everything. Let's go further. Points spawn. Those are just a lot of cosmetic things that are made with these points. So in the end of the graph, let's see. So we get the same points. They just have different position, different location, different rotation, different everything, and different density. They are colorful, black, gray, and white. That's density. Okay, transformation makes a little bit mess in our grid. They're also in different places now. If you play with these numbers, the house will become bigger or smaller. Don't hesitate to play with them. It's nothing terrible. It's totally okay. Modifiers is for this box. This may be useful later when we play with removing something from something. I will explain it a little bit later. It's just a good thing when size of the box is somehow similar with the size of the mesh. It doesn't match automatically. Let's go to projection. So projection attaches all of these points to the ground. So you see, it now fills all the hills, all the lower places. Everything is here. It's accurately, and it even gets the rotation. So you see project position and project rotation of the landscape. Everything is here. Now transformation of points. We make them a little bit more messy. Some of them become smaller, some of them become bigger. Here are the parameters. Self-prune deletes those points that are on the same place. For example, if you have 2 points on the same place, this thing clears it. Density filter. Just believe me, it's needed because some points somehow managed to get out of the range between 0 and 1, and there was no chance to do something with those points because they can be filtrated in any way. Rather, they can make you a little bit problems. So this density filter, although it seems to do nothing, no, it does a little bug fix. It makes sure that all points are between 0 and 1. And now we make this projection thing again. It's not... I can't tell you now why exactly this projection is doubles here, but believe me, there was something that went wrong between here and why we couldn't use projection once. You can play with all those things by yourself, you can move them, you can add further things, you can do whatever you want, feel free. It's not ideal, I never said that, it's just a thing that works and you can make it work better, just feel free. So these projections attach all our points back to the ground, but now they are pretty nicely messy. They are not like soldiers in a row. They are nice, with different rotations, with different positions. They're nice for generating ground. Set density is pretty nice for filtration. Here comes the lower and upper bound filter. And here is one last thing that I forgot to mention. Get attribute from point index is the thing, because you remember every point knows perfectly, if we look at the attributes, it knows perfectly everything about its biome. And this node, it just will trace all unnecessary meanings and leaves only those that we need now. So this node knows the ground point scale low meaning, and this node knows the ground point scale high meaning. So this is the minimum scale, this is the high scale. We make some vector attribute magic. So this one is 0.4, this one is 0.5. Okay, and they all come to scale minimum and scale maximum in node transform points. So you see they are disabled here, you can't do them anything inside the graph because they come from the data asset. And everywhere where you see those nodes, it happens exactly the same thing. We will see more of them further because, as you can remember, in ground there are not many variables. So here we attach mesh, we have already discussed it, and in the end we get those nice ground generated. Here it is. If we enable it, we get our ground back. And this is debug. Okay, the information from this debug is saved in elfin ground. This is some kind, it's a reroute actually, but we can call it something like a variable. It will be very important later because you see we have the exact information about scale, about rotation, how much space, what exact space these mesh have in the environment, and all this information from each biome can be used further for difference. For example, if I have a lot of trees and we want to make sure that no rock and no bush will be generated over a tree, we will use these. So most of these nodes are pretty the same. You won't meet anything unusual, so you see all the same settings in tree biome. But here the subgraph gets not only spline line, not only remover. Okay, ground didn't get any remover because remover spline don't work on ground. But here it has everything. It has remover information and it has information about paths. So this is where everything is. This is why trees disappear on paths, because path gives the information to the subgraph here, and the subgraph won't generate any points. Here everything exactly the same, just you will see a little bit more get attribute from point index nodes. We won't dive into them a lot, that really doesn't matter, they're all pretty the same. The only interesting things is here, that's our spatial noise or spots that we were using. Here the information about mesh comes into two separate pipelines, and here is spot 0 and here is spot 1. So if we don't tickle use spots, both of these pipelines work together perfectly like nothing happened. And if you tickle that we use spots, this graph will filtrate everything into two different pipelines, and here comes information about mesh already with spatial noise, with all that nice spots that we saw. Okay, exactly the same thing happens with bushes, 3 of them, and a smaller rock. As you know, the first thing that generates is tree, then bushes, and all tree information, all tree spots, they are distracted from bushes, and then rocks are generated, and all the previously generated information about tree's position, about bush position comes here. So you see there are a lot of nodes for difference. Oh, here they are. If we go further, the most difficult spline is grass, because grass should be thick. There are some explanations. Okay, it has the biggest difference zone because grass is the last to generate, and it has, as you remember, secondary grid. Here is how it's generated. Let's look at it. Let's disable trees and leave only ground and grass. Okay, so here it is. When we get the input of the grass, it doesn't want to work today. Hey, show me something, please. It doesn't want. So grass is heavy. This is the only way I can show you it. This is the primary grid for grass, and as you can see, it's much bigger than the actual grass things. So after we apply all the secondary grids, we get something like this. So now there are enough points for our grass. And then we just continue to make some ordinary magic. We make bounds smaller, we transform their positions, make it much more chaotic, set density, filter everything, projection. Yes, now it shows. That's where the grass becomes pretty chaotic and as grassy as we see it. The main difference now is that we don't project it on landscape like we do with other mesh. Grass is pretty small. We make sure that it won't hit ray hit query. Okay, it's not generating on the landscape, it goes from above on the ground. It's like sun rays. It comes from above and falls, and where it meets any mesh, it spawns on it. So all trees, all bushes, all rocks, they're generated on the landscape, on the surface. Grass is the only thing that is generated on the surface of any mesh that it meets. This is a really expensive node, as you can see, but it's worth it because we can generate some grass on the edges of rocks. If you don't like it, if you don't want this option, you may just turn it off and replace with simple projection. Gumroad node, it makes sure that rocks are already generated. It waits, it's like a timer. It waits until rocks are generated, and only then it lets the pipeline go further. And then inside our scale, this is exactly the thing that makes grass around trees bigger. This is how it makes it. This is the difference from 3 points, and this is the example where we use the original 3 points. You see? There we need it here. Oh, it's not where it is. It's here. So the original 3 points, they come here from trees. We put them here, and that's where they work. They work for distance between trees and grass mesh. And the closer grass to the tree, the bigger it will become in this node scale density. So that's about the biomes. And the last thing that we haven't discussed are paths. So as I have already mentioned, they recognize paths only by tag. PCG path spline and PCG path spline P. This one gets data asset from the data asset that we have already mentioned, and it generates mesh. It uses static mesh spawner. And here is the rotation thing. As you can see, it has 4 different transforms for random spots. They are filtered by attribute filter, and each of them rotates every fence part, every fence mesh, only by a very specific amount of degrees. This is 0, 90, 180 and 270. And this is how you can do it if you don't need the 4-dimension rotation. If you want only 2, for example, if you have big pieces of fence, you can delete these to 90 and 270. You won't need them and leave only these two, and you will have a nice chaotic thing. Okay, this one, it's a paths. It generates decals. You can see it doesn't use static mesh spawner, it uses spawn actor, and this spawn actor finds blueprint decal actor that we have already seen a lot of times. Here it is, it takes these and generates. Let's debug both of these splines. This is the primary spline sampler, and you can see that this path A is a really thick pipeline, and according to these bounding modifiers, all mesh will be disabled around it. Okay, and in the end we get a little bit of the picture. I have a lot of messy points. They just rotate in random directions. They go left and right on the path to get this messy texture. It doesn't repeat, it's really unique and looks really nice. You can use mesh instead of decals. This is only example of how a decal can be put into a PCG graph. Okay, if we talk about second B path, it's much more simple. So we have just regular points along the spline, they don't go anywhere. The world ray hit queried onto everything they see. So you see they go exactly along the ground, not along the landscape. Rotation, and in the static mesh comes something like this. So nothing much difference from what we see in the final place. The last thing that we didn't discuss is water level. It's a pretty simple setting. It's corrected by hand. You can change the water level. It has nothing to do with the actual water that you see. And water level affects bushes, trees and grass. As you can see, it grows only above a certain level, and here it is 230. For example, if we make it lower, 100. Okay, you see now some trees grow from the water. It's a little bit messy now, but it has some charmful atmosphere. Okay, so how it works, it works here. In subgraphs you may find these two nodes. You get actor property, water level, and you compare it with position Z. If position of the point is higher, then it passes the filtration. If the position Z of a point is lower than the water level, then this attribute filter will cut it off. And that's all. That's how it works. You see, nothing really difficult. Okay, I think that's all for today. Feel free to experiment with PCG, because Unreal Engines do that a lot now. Every month I think they do something really new, and things that were frustrating yesterday maybe have a brand new node tomorrow, and you will be able to use it much simpler than you could imagine ever. And this PCG graph will get old-fashioned very soon. but the ideas, the mechanics, feel free to use them as you want. They are working for now, and I hope they will continue to work for some time. Just enjoy, experiment, and don't forget to share your creations. They're really nice to see. Don't worry of PCG, it's just a way to make your life easier and to save you a ton of nerves after you have lost them on creating the graph. Yeah, see you!